Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our first Teacher Talk of 2021. I think we can all agree that we're super excited, maybe a little bit relieved to be in the new year. And I honestly can't think of a better way to start our Teacher Talk series than with what we are doing tonight. For those of you who are just joining us for the first time, Teacher Talk is brought to you by National Life Group's LifeChanger of the Year program, which is a K through 12 recognition program that recognizes educators across the nation who go above and beyond to make a difference in the lives of students. And this past year in 2020, we actually built out our LifeChanger program a little bit more and introduced this Teacher Talk series, which is led by educators for educators, specifically the K through 12 space. And it's really designed to just be another platform where we bring thought leaders together in the K through 12 space and have honest, candid conversations about all sorts of topics. So as I said, leadership series is the best way I can think of to start the year. And without further ado, I am going to turn it over to our moderators, Dr. Michael Lubelfeld and Dr. Nick Poliak. Guys, take it away. We have a first class group of panelists as well, so let's get to it.
Thank you so much, Mallory. It is an honor to be here. Nick was going to start with some of the welcome and introductions, but I just wanted to give him that tee up. We have three of probably the nation's finest leaders, and you're going to find that today in our panelists. They're spectacular, not only in the ancient arts of unlearning, which we'll get into, but in the actual real life arts of leading and educating and inspiring their communities. So Nick, why don't you get us started?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks so much, Mallory. Thanks, Mike. The folks at LifeChanger reached out to the very best educators in the world to moderate tonight, and they weren't available. So then you got stuck with Mike and with me, but we're going to do our best. So we appreciate that you're taking the time to be with us tonight. The way we want to run this is Mike and I will very briefly introduce ourselves. We want to kick it over to our rockstar panelists so you can find out who's in the room with you tonight. And then we're gonna jump into the topic, which is unlearning leadership. So my name is Nick Poliak. I am the proud superintendent of Leiden High School District 212, just outside O'Hare International Airport in suburban Chicago. I've been an educator for 21 years. The building level, the district level, been a superintendent for the past 12, been a school board member. More importantly, I'm a husband and father of 4 amazing kids. Just super excited to be here with you tonight. Mike, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, good evening. My name is Mike Lubelfeld, Superintendent of Schools, North Shore School District 112, serving children in Highland Park and Highwood. We're on the beautiful shores of Lake Michigan, just north of the city of Chicago and just south of the great state of Wisconsin. And I'm a 3-time superintendent in my 3rd superintendency, 11 years. Absolutely feel blessed to be a superintendent, humbled by the fact that I get to serve with teachers and support staff and leaders and about 4,000 students, a great board, parents, and everybody. Spent most of my entire life in the suburbs of Chicago, Chicagoland. My 30th year as a public school educator. Nick and I have the good opportunity and fortune to do some cool things around the country, around the world. And I'm very, very proud to be here to discuss unlearning leadership with Faith, Brian, and Joe. And I'm grateful you're here, and I think you're going to learn a lot from these great folks and these friends of ours.
Faith, we're going to let you introduce yourself first. All 3 of you, what we'd really like you to do is just tell the group who you are, what you do, maybe where you work. As we talk about unlearning, what was something different about your holidays this year in 2020? Faith?
All right, well, thank you so much for having me this evening. My name is Faith Cole, and I have the opportunity and the pleasure of serving as the director of MTSS for Oak Park School District in Illinois. This is my 18th year in the district. I've served as a classroom teacher, a teacher mentor, assistant principal, as well as a principal. So my current role, I know for most education folks, MTSS means multi-tiered system of support. For our non-education folks and people that have no idea what I do, like my husband and my son, it's really my job is support the systems and structures for our students to ensure that they're getting whatever they need, whether that's social, emotional, or academic needs. And so I always tell people, my job is really to help everybody be the best version of themselves. And so that looks different for people at different times. And so making sure that we're doing right for students all the time. Trying to think other fun things. I have a husband and a 11-year-old son who have no idea what I do, but love me very much. And I would say the biggest difference this year with the holidays, a lot of my family lives very locally in Oak Park. However, I have a sister who lives in Phoenix, and she typically comes in for the holidays, and she was not able to do so this year. But I am grateful. I know we will see her at some point. It just was a little different this year.
Thanks so much, Faith. Joe, you want to go next?
My name is Joe Sanfilippo. I'm a superintendent in the Fall Creek School District, home of the Fall Creek Crickets. Crickets everywhere, go Crickets! And we are a small school district right outside of Eau Claire, Wisconsin, about an hour and a half east of Minneapolis, St. Paul, on the good side, on the Wisconsin side. And I've been in this district for 10 years. I've been an educator. I guess I didn't even count. It's probably, what is this, 21? It's like 23 years or so. And I've been a superintendent, like I said, for 10 years. And I was a principal, and I taught 5th grade and 2nd grade. And I was an elementary counselor prior to taking on this role. So I think the weirdest thing about the change, or in terms of the holiday season, I think I probably have to echo what Faith has said, just in terms of not being able to see people that we would normally see in the way that we would normally see them. I think that's that was kind of the change for us, still being able to connect, but in a way that that we haven't in the past. So you get through it, for the people that you care about, and work through it. So this is, like I said, my 10th year in Fall Creek. I have my beautiful wife and my 3 kids are all here. I live across the street from school, so I can just like walk home real quick. I might be done by the time you guys push stop on this thing. So you just never know, right? All right. Thanks for having me tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Bring it home, Brian.
Brian Troop, superintendent at Ephrata Area School District. We're about an hour west of Philadelphia, serving about 4,300 kids. This is my 7th year as superintendent, and we're doing a lot of exciting stuff here. We had the ability to host a cohort of superintendents from across the country as part of ASA, one of their programs, and got to really shine a spotlight on some of the work that our kids are involved in doing. My background tonight is actually a student design space that we ended up building as part of a high school redesign. So a little props to our kids and the work that they do in helping us meet our full potential as a district. This holiday season, I found myself actually watching my watch. I had a 15-minute timer on my Apple Watch, and when the 15 minutes were up, I moved to a different location, so that I was never a close contact of anybody in my family. When we spent about an hour with my in-laws and about an hour with my parents, and just tried to have some kind of normalcy to the holiday season while still trying to monitor the ability to be quarantined. Nobody wanted to be quarantined. I have 3 sons who are all home. One's in college, and the other 2 are in high school, ages 14, 17, and 20. And none of them wanted to be quarantined away from playing indoor soccer or doing anything, going back to college and that sort of thing. So we made a little bit of a game of it, but just trying to do our part in helping to not continue the spread of coronavirus. Really happy to be here, happy to engage in a conversation and learn along with everyone here. So thanks again for having me.
Thank you so much to all 3 of you for being here. Nick and I have benefited from really sort of life-changing professional development and professional leadership opportunities. And across our work, we've met some incredible people like the 3 who are here tonight. And we've also worked with leaders from around our state, around our nation, from various parts of the world. And some people say, well, what is unlearning? It's kind of a catchy title, and the unlearning leader leading for tomorrow's schools today. We understand it's probably a bestseller internationally. We understand all that, but really, what is it? Where did it come from? So several years ago, Nick and I were in an Illinois School of Advanced Leadership professional development series for about 18 months with the Illinois Association of School Administrators, and very seriously, we met with other younger superintendents, younger in the career, not younger in age. Obviously, there's an age difference between me and Nick, but younger in the career. We met people from all over. Oh, hold on a second. And then we went to a national program with the AASA, and we're starting to get a lot of experiences, and we're collecting a lot of people, and we're really just having amazing opportunities with leadership. We're making successes, we're making failures, we're learning, we're doing. And then, as Nick's going to tell you, we went to a Future Ready seminar, and Nick?
Okay, I was wondering if we were going to actually get back to our panelists, but I'll wrap it up quickly here for everybody. So we got to see this amazing speaker named Jack Aldenrich, and Jack is a futurist, which apparently is a career you can have. I wasn't aware. And Jack was speaking to a room of healthcare professionals in a video we watched, and he asked this room a very simple question. And he said, just think in your mind, what two colors make up a yield sign, the traffic sign? And he said, raise your hand if you think yield signs are yellow and black. And almost every hand in the room went up. And he said, congratulations, that is the correct answer, as long as I asked it prior to 1971. From 1971 to today, every yield sign in the United States has been red and white. And so the takeaway was, many of us have learned that basic fact at some point in our life. And it's very hard as humans to unlearn something that's no longer true. And so Mike and I had this aha moment. We said, boy, what if we laid that thinking on education? Why do we put our desks in columns and rows? Why do we take summer vacation off? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? What about our practice needs to be unlearned to make room for the new realities? And that's really what unlearning is all about. And so enough from us. We just wanted to set the stage so everybody watching had an understanding of what we mean by the word unlearning. And so let's talk about the really important people. I mean, you three are amazing, but we want to talk about the staff in your district and the amazing work being done by all the people that you work with, that you serve. Brian, if you can start us off, tell us about your staff members and how they've had to employ unlearning over the past year as they reinvent themselves.
Sure. We had to laugh at ourselves a little bit when this pandemic first started, because we had been on a path that was a little bit different than the traditional, and trying to make change and trying to update our system. We had a portrait of a graduate developed that had 21st century skills, and we're trying to do some things differently within our district. And part of the rationale and the justification to aim at different targets and to instruct differently and to give more ownership to kids was because it's a rapidly changing world. And we were saying this for the last 3 years before March 13th hit. So once that hit, we were no longer struggling for evidence of a rapidly changing world. It was changing faster than every 2 weeks, we literally would get a different set of guidelines and objectives from our state of how we can teach, who we can teach, what modes are appropriate, what are inappropriate, what counts towards our required number of days. So we were putting the puzzle together and then taking it apart and then putting it together and taking it apart differently throughout. So our teachers have done an amazing job of keeping up with the rapidly changing world that we thought was rapid before, and now it's on like hyperspeed. I think the unlearning that really has happened, though, since we've been in this pandemic is how, I think, two areas come to mind: the relationships that they have with students and that they foster among students, and then our assessments. Both of those areas we've had to kind of reinvent completely, because we no longer benefit from the face-to-face time and overhearing the interaction between two students, or seeing the body language of a student as they walk into class and being able to check into them. So the relationships, we didn't know how much we relied on the physical sharing of space, and that hurt us in our ability to support kids and continue those relationships. And then we had some great insights by teachers saying on the assessment side of some of their assessments they realized had Googleable answers on them. And they were going to give them while kids were at home alone on a computer with a smartphone and no one there monitoring them. They realized some of my assessments don't really, and we ended up with the conversation, well, if you can find it on the internet, how important is it that they can answer that? Maybe we need to go a little deeper and have some performance things and do something. So I think our assessments overall improved because we realized that some of the lower level questions didn't fly in our new reality.
Oh, that's so powerful, Brian. You know, Mike and I always say we can change grading and assessments as much as we want, as long as we still give extra credit for kids that bring in a box of Kleenex. We never get rid of that, right?
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Brian. Faith, do you want to chime in on that one?
No, absolutely. And just kind of thinking about Brian's point too, please don't tell my son's science teacher about that Googling, because I feel like that's what got us through the first trimester. But there's a lot of things that you mentioned, which I think ring very true to our district as well. I think the biggest thing that I noticed was in March, as everybody scrambled, like across the nation, to really start preparing for this remote environment. What we try to do in our school district was just replace what we were doing in the classroom and put it on Zoom. And I think the issue we had there was that we believed all the things we've been doing in the space would carry over exactly into the Zoom world. And to be honest with you, probably back in March, I maybe knew how to say Zoom or spell Zoom, but it was such a different out of the box thinking for a lot of us that we hope that if we do the same things we've always done, we're gonna still get that response. We learned very quickly that that lack of student engagement, things that we had taken, I don't want to say for granted, but just assumed to be practice, weren't working for us in the springtime. So we really had to revamp that. What I think we've also learned is that students just being in our space was enough. And we thought, wow, they can just absorb all the information that's coming to them. But now when there's more conflicting, there's things that are happening at home, they're not this captive audience like we've always had. It really has forced us to look at students in a different way, their level of engagement, how we really are making sure that they're understanding the material. And so what we kind of did in March, like I said, kind of getting through the school year, spent a lot of time kind of reevaluating, getting feedback from staff members. Our administrative staff was instrumental in this process, but also from our students and our families. How are you experiencing this remote learning environment? And then we spent throughout the summer really kind of adjusting our programming so that in the fall, we'd be able to offer something that really would be meeting the needs of more of our students. And we do know that some of our students will continue to struggle, but we put a lot of things in place. And my superintendent always says, it's time to stitch a new garment. And I think that's what we've done. I think there's a lot of things that we have changed that even when we go back in person, those things are going to be maintained now in our district, which is exciting, but it was a rough road getting there.
Yeah, Joe, go ahead and follow that impressive answer.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm just gonna go Crickets. So here's the thing that I think that came up apparently for me the most time is the thing that when we started in the pandemic. I think one thing that really came to the forefront that we talked about, two things are going to get answered unequivocally in the first month of this pandemic. The first is how well do we know our kids, and the second is what are we willing to do for them when they're not here. And I think one of the things that was really important to us as we moved into that area was if we didn't know what kids needed in terms of their basic needs, if it came to food, electricity, Wi-Fi, whatever the case may be, if we didn't know that about kids, then we had failed up to that point, making sure that we had great relationships with our kids. And even if we didn't know exactly what they needed, if we weren't connected to the people who did, then I think we failed that piece of it. And we just had to make sure that we could be connected to people who they were connected to. So that was the first part, is making sure that we, how well do we know our kids. The second piece was, what are we willing to do for them when they're not here? And really that means, how are we going to take a step back from what we've always known and move to a place that nobody knows what to do, right? And so it was really interesting for me is we were able to turn the system around in about a week, right? Which in and of itself is crazy. And it wasn't great, but it got us through. And our people were working so hard in the spring, and you could hear the national narrative of teachers in the spring of last year was like, look at these people. Look what they're doing. They are creating a new environment for kids. They're amazing, right? And then when we got to the fall and we'd done all the work in the summer and we created a better system, a system that was really more responsive and proactive at the same time, and all of a sudden it turned into, can't they do just a little bit more? And I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Like, our people are crushing it. They are doing incredible things for kids. They're changing the way that they instruct. They're changing the way that they build relationships, because now it's on a screen, right? And they're giving kids opportunities to connect in ways that they never have. Now, I think the idea that we have to keep in mind is we had to unlearn a lot of those practices to get here. But if we always kept the kid at the heart, at the core of what we're doing, we were always going to be able to move forward with whatever that core was.
Thank you all. Really, really just fantastic stuff. Right now, Faith is going to kick us off with our next question. And with this one, we're going to ask each of you to look inward. Look to yourself, please. Think about yourself as a professional educator. What have you personally unlearned over the course of your career? So a little bit beyond the current experience, what have you personally unlearned over the course of your educational career? Faith, would you get us started?
Absolutely. So I think when I think about what I've unlearned professionally, one of the biggest things when I kind of started out in my education career, there was this feeling around if you're sharing out with other people the good things that are happening, whether it be in your classroom, in your school, it was almost like it was bragging. So that anything that's happening in your space is a celebration, but it's really only for your students in your space. And so I didn't have this feeling around, hey, maybe somebody's interested in what I'm doing, maybe I can learn from other people. And it wasn't until probably a couple years ago that I was at a professional learning opportunity, and the one of the panelists made a comment about, that if these great things are happening, if we don't share those out, whether in a social platform or in some other way, it only lives in that space. And I thought to myself, gosh, all kids should be afforded these same wonderful opportunities. And so one of the things that I learned was that it's not bragging. Really what you're doing is you are not only controlling the narrative, so you're able to really put out, some of those positive things that are happening, but it's really such an amazing community that you're starting to build outside of your school. So when I think about like Twitter, for instance, the ability to connect with people kind of across the nation with similar goals, understandings, but even experts in fields have really allowed me to be better at the work that I'm doing. And so again, and particularly now as we're kind of going into the fall, where everybody was, praising us in the spring, and now in the fall, it's like this and that, is making sure that I'm getting out there and sharing what Oak Park is doing, what we're doing really, really well, and making sure people understand the work that goes behind that. So I kind of think of myself as maybe like a Twitter renaissance, maybe, that it's really my job, particularly because I can be in so many spaces at one time, to really get in front of the narrative and make sure people are seeing and experiencing those positive things. And nothing says that like a picture and a short tweet about that. So I would say that's something that I've unlearned that has probably had the most impact in my professional career.
Faith, thank you. What I want to do is kind of have Joe follow you again. And I think, we're just challenging Joe and picking on him because that was an outstanding response. Really appreciate that.
Go Crickets. Okay.
Yeah, go Crickets. Thank you.
Crickets.
I call never following Faith anymore. Like, that's what I call. Can I call that? Because I think my answer is probably the same too. Like, the idea that we have to consider is how are we making sure that these stories get out? I had just kind of a conversation with Sine Bell, actually. He's a director in Katy, Texas right now. And we were just having the conversation literally an hour ago about the importance of storytelling. But one of the things that I thought that she brought up that was really, really important, really like kind of like got the light switch on for me was when we were talking about when it comes down to the stories, it's not just about the story that gets out there, it's about who the storytellers are in this space, right? So if you have people in your space that can help create the story and then revise the story, and then they get the first draft and then they get to revise it, and then they're authentic about the next piece of the story and they become the storytellers of your space. Now there's a wealth of knowledge, but there's also more movement. One of the things that's been really important for us here that I feel like that I had to unlearn was the importance of creating moments that turn into movements moving forward, right? Like, so all of everybody, when it comes down to telling stories, I think we get into this area where we're looking for the event, right? We're looking for the prom, we're looking for the graduation, for the homecoming, the event that happens that we're going to get out and celebrate. And what we really have to understand is that the moments that get shared and the moments that drive movements happen literally in 30-second increments in every moment of our day. And if we don't figure, one of the things that we talked about here that's been really important is we change the mindset to move to, like, we call it recognize, acknowledge, extend. So you walk down hallways with the mindset that you're going to recognize the greatness of your colleagues and what's happening in that space. Don't just recognize it, but acknowledge to that colleague that they're really great at their work, right? And that's great for the two people who are in that space, like Faith was saying. But when you extend the conversation to somebody who wasn't there, what inevitably happens is the person that you extend the conversation to over here is going to walk down the hallway and talk to the person who's doing great things down here because at some point somebody did it for them and it felt good. And if you can create a culture where that is pervasive in terms of all of the work that you do, you recognize great work, acknowledge great work, and extend that great work to people who weren't there. Now you can create movements with all of the moments that happen that everybody can't be there to see.
Joe, thank you very much. Brian, now you get to follow both of those.
Yeah, that's great. This is the worst spot to be in. I'll try and just add two things. I agree 100% with what my two esteemed colleagues just shared. I think what in Joe's comment, making it clear what great work is And I think that's our role in the district office, is to make sure that we come together and we know what that is and we can define that. So when we see great work, it is the same thing we're seeing and praising and promoting and aligning. And then I think our role is also in framing the reality that we see and helping to frame that. I think one of the points made earlier was about the difference between the teachers' perception of what they were able to produce. We use I think it was an Abe Lincoln quote, something about some people are disappointed in the rose bush because it has thorns, and some are thankful that the thorn bush has roses. And I think that kind of spoke to our elementary teachers, especially. All of our teachers, certainly, but elementary teachers take it so personally. The product that they put forth, it needed to be 100% as good. And especially since the kids missed out on it last spring, they wanted everything to be perfect when we came back to school. And it couldn't be. It couldn't be perfect. We're doing 2 lanes. We're live streaming into the home. We have cameras in classrooms. There's a whole lot of other stuff going on. And they wanted it to be perfect. Meanwhile, our parents are just so happy with everything that's being offered for them, that they were just so pleased that the product they were getting was markedly better than what we were able to do back in the spring. So parents and kids were just thrilled to be able to come in for some of the time and to be connecting and to getting what they could get. Meanwhile, our teachers were kind of beating themselves up because it wasn't their A game, and they were feeling deflated that they weren't in a position to bring their A game for the kids.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate sort of that introspective look and just looking at the impact. And I think unlearning really does kind of take on a new meaning and a new sort of power when we're faced with this real experience of abrupt and unanticipated change, and then abrupt anticipated change also, because we've been challenged twice. We've been challenged 3 times. We've been challenged 4 times. Like, we weren't ready for it, then we were sort of ready for it, and now we're living it. So it's really neat to see it. Nick, I do believe the next question is for you. So you're probably wondering why I'm talking right now.
I was just giving you your space. I'll wait. I'm patient. I want to appreciate also the people that are with us, that are participating in the chat. Feel free to keep adding to this. There's power in the collective. So keep adding your thoughts in the chat. We appreciate that. Mike's question brought the 3 of you a little retrospective to think about where we've come over the course of your careers. I want to take you looking forward. We talk about our schools all the time that were built for a factory model. We talk about, the bells and system, bells and cells, and all the things we talk about, the antiquated forms of education that still persist. So when you look to the future and think about what's coming next, what's something that we currently do that we need to unlearn?
The first thing that we have to understand is that we try to teach way too much content, and I mean, we just do. And I think if we can't figure out why we teach that content, we got to take a step back and think about like what's really happening right now. And I think the thing that I want to make sure that we kind of move ourselves to is this, the getting away from the regurgitation of content and the application of content, and moving to application of content, in terms of what's going to help kids once they're gone. And there's a couple of things that really resonate with me when it comes to what we need to change. And one of the things is that I think we teach people how to lead throughout their course of their time here, but we don't really let them lead until they leave. So like, we're developing the leaders of tomorrow. Well, let them lead. Like, honestly, it's just like, we don't do it, and we don't do it with our staff enough. And I think a lot of times it's like, well, I know how I want it because it's got to be this way, because it's always been this way, or because I know what it's supposed to look like that way. So I think it's just going to have to be that way. And when you do that, now you're just trying to create clones of yourself as a leader. And that's not good for anybody, especially me. Look at me. So what we want to do is to try to figure out ways that we can create opportunities for people to lead on their and build their own skill set, their own capacity. It doesn't matter if they're 4, 14, 24, or 44, man. Like, give them an opportunity to lead. It may not look the way that you want it to, but at the same time, it's probably going to look better. And people are much less likely to knock things down that they help build. So figure out ways to get people moving together, and you're going to be in a much better situation.
Good stuff, Joe. You're teeing us up for our student leadership, student voice and leadership session coming up in a few weeks also. Brian, you want to follow that one up?
Yeah, I'll start with a quote from the Unlearning Leader book. I think it's on page 96 for everyone that has their copy, probably highlighted on some of you. Yeah. we have to unlearn old truths to begin to lead in new ways. And the word truths really struck me on that, because when we think about our system and our traditional system, it's true that it was built for a time that needed that kind of system. And it was actually effective at putting the United States in a position of power worldwide. Our school system produced competent factory workers who could follow directions and make things look the same way and replicate those. I think there are three areas that are key important areas to consider when looking at our current system compared to that factory model. We don't need factory workers anymore. We don't need people that don't think creatively. So we need a different product from our school system. We also know more about how to engage students in learning, how to make it personal, the importance of relevance and authenticity. Our only best tool back then, when the system was developed, designed, was lecture. One size fits all lecture. And then the third thing is we have capacity through technology to deliver a much more personalized, engaging, and relevant. So because we need something different, we know something more about how to engage learners, and we have the ability to deliver something far better. It's embarrassing that we still have systems that look so much like the old systems. So we really need to unlearn, especially in those three areas, I believe, because that's where our context is now. And just like the system was true to what it needed and what we could do and what we knew about learning back then, we now have changed on all three of those, and we need to build a system that reflects our new understanding.
Oh, well said. Faith, how about you?
Yeah, you know, Brent, and I think you make such a great point. When I kind of look at our education system, even though it doesn't fulfill the needs of all our students, I do feel like it's doing what it was intended to do. It was really intended not to support all students, to support all learners. It feels like it's intended for a very specific type of learner, a very specific type of student. And so the system is really doing what it intended to do. And so, you know, that's just, you know, that's a whole nother conversation, probably a whole nother panel. With that said, though, I think, you know, being in this pandemic, it has really kind of forced us to take a look at the systems and structures we had in place, because now we're getting rid of like the brick and mortar. So that, you know, setup we've had before that we thought kind of worked, now we're seeing actually didn't work very well at all. And so just like I said, just having students in the environment is not going to be the way that they're going to be engaged. And this has forced us to take a look at that. And so one of the things I think about schools, what this has exposed is we really are the gatekeepers to everything. When I thought about, you know, we're getting phone calls from families who's like, well, how are you going to do the coat drive this year? Or how are we going to do, you know, how are we going to do Girl Scouts? Are you going to do yearbook pictures? So many things around how making sure families got food, that schools are really the gatekeepers of the community. And so that let me also understand that we need to also build the capacity of community stakeholders as well as our families, so they feel too that they can support this effort. I feel like families don't feel like they have the confidence to support the work we're doing within the spaces. And so if we're able to support their effort and build that capacity, it doesn't have to only live in the school. So it doesn't only have to live that 8 to 3 time. It's who our students are all the time. Because we know for some of our students, that 8 to 3 time is not really when the most learning happens. It happens outside of that space. And so if we're able to build capacity, then we're making sure that students are really getting their needs met throughout their experience in the community.
Awesome. Phenomenal work, all three of you. Mike and I like to talk a lot about the origin story of our educational system. You know, we went from the one-room schoolhouse to Horace Mann traveling to Prussia and bringing back this concept of age-based or grade-based classrooms and in the system that we set up. And so we'll be talking to groups every now and again and just ask the really important question, is this currently what they're still doing in Prussia? And we've had to tell some groups that Prussia no longer exists. But that's the comical nature of the system that we still run, and we put kids in classrooms based on their born-on dates and not on their abilities and their needs. So, Mike, I'll turn it over to you.
Beautiful. Brian, we're going to ask you to start this one. You know, we've often focused on the negatives about the past year, and a number of you have alluded to some of that today. And I think human nature in the way our educational system has brought us up has often been to be deficit-minded. And as leaders who are unlearning, we're really getting that out of our heads and becoming asset leaders and focusing on the good. So along those lines, while we often focus on the negatives of the past year and of the current unprecedented times, please share with our listeners and share with each other, what are some of the silver linings you have seen that made you smile over the past year? Brian, we're going to ask you to start this, please.
Thanks. That was excellent delivery on that question. Set me up. I really, two things come to mind, actually, Mike. Empathy. I think we've been afforded the opportunity to gain tremendous amount of empathy for our students. Putting cameras in classrooms and then live streaming into the home and having devices in the home where we can see not just the kid engaged, but everything else that's going on in his or her world. The diversity of home life that we've experienced in our district and what we've seen and what we've heard as far as interactions and know what they're dealing with and what they're like at home. We've gained so much insight into those kids, much more than just seeing them. It's not just them on a rectangle on a screen. There's a whole lot more going on in that picture in most of our situations. So I think our teachers and everyone else has gained just this tremendous opportunity to kind of see into their world more than we ever had before. And through that, we've gained a lot of empathy for what people are dealing with and what they have and don't have at home. And then the other piece, our students are just so resilient. We have resilience and grit as part of our portrait of a graduate, so we're trying to promote that anyway. This obstacle of masks and face coverings and social distance and different ways to do, I mean, it's been a struggle for the adults, but the kids have just like exceeded expectations. They can get through anything. They're so resilient and gritty and they find a way around, and it becomes normal. It became normal within 2-3 weeks of them being in school of how it works, how to, inline all the different routines. They had to relearn, unlearn, and then relearn everything about their school routine to be able to be, socially distanced and follow all of our safety protocols. So those two things stand out to me: the empathy that we've gained as the adults and the resilience and grit within our kids is empowering.
Brian, thank you very much. Really appreciate that. You also get a double point word for going to unlearn, relearn, and unlearn. Just we'll tally that at the end.
I thought a light was going to go off or something in my. Yeah.
Joe, since you called not following faith anymore, I will honor your calling it. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Please, man. She's got great ideas, and I'm like, yeah, let's look at what she said. Yeah, that's great. So I think I've been the happiest with how people have found ways to help each other. And I think, I think we used to live in a place where, not, in Fall Creek, but in education in particular, where I think everybody, there were a time where people locked up their rooms and closed down their doors and thought, I got to make sure that I take care of my stuff because I don't want the person next door looking any better than what I'm looking right now. And I think once this thing got knocked down, you're thinking about people. If you're a veteran teacher, even if you're in my position, you've been in the system for 20 years, right? That also means that you've been in a very similar system for 12 to 16 before that, right? So you're talking about 40 years of time in one model. And then that was happening through March. And then, like March 12th, we're like, hey, yeah, by the way, right? Like all of a sudden we're going to change all of this stuff. And these people did it. They did it, and they didn't complain. They leaned into families, and families, I think that the first thing that I'm very, happy about and really excited about is that the way that people helped each other. But that's not just people in our building. Like we asked our families, we asked kids, what do you need and or how are you doing and what do you need? Those are the first two questions that we asked our families when the pandemic struck, right? What I didn't know was that our community was going to ask us the same two questions. Because the minute that this thing hit, we had community groups, we had church groups, we had local groups, we had families that just said, what do you need for your families? They came out of nowhere, right? And I think, the way that we take care of each other, this was going to bubble, all that stuff was going to bubble to the surface. And the way that we took care of each other in that spot really led us to this place where now we can try a couple of new things because we've developed the trust that goes along with that work. So I'm just really impressed with educators across the country. I don't think I've ever been more impressed with educators across the country in terms of what they've done. But the walls that have been knocked down between classrooms, not only just to get kids into the building, but to make sure that we're now not only empathetic, but helpful to each other in terms of the work that we're doing, really blew my mind.
Joe, thank you very much. Faith?
No, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was about to jump in. I was so passionate and excited about his response.
Thank you, Faith.
Yeah, no, I could not agree more. I think one of the things, when I think about just the changes and, particularly going back to the resilience of our students, I think having students inside a school space helps level the playing field a little bit. So obviously outside of students that maybe, need additional clothes or there's some, academic needs, that it all appears that everybody's on the same playing field. When we have a remote setting, now all of a sudden things become more obvious. So you're in spaces where students might be in a quiet, they have their own quiet space to work, but they have access to materials. And you have other kids that might be in an environment where there's several kids kind of walking through the space. Maybe they're not even at home. We've had some students that are sitting in cars, so they have access to internet inside, various areas. And so one of the things I do think about with the resilience of students is that they have all those variables and they're still showing up. They're still showing up to these spaces, eager to learn, ready to learn to the best of their capability. So that's definitely speaking to the resilience. I think one of the things too, when I look about just, in general, that's been particularly eye-opening as well, is also seeing the empathy that our families are seeing towards our teachers, because they're technically in those spaces too when their students are. So they see when the cat walks past, or they see when the internet goes down, or they see when a funny joke is made and the teacher, is snorting or whatever. And so those have been the moments I think that have been captured in this environment that, give me goosebumps, make me excited about this idea that teachers are people, students are people, but it's really those unexpected, where a kindergartner takes you to the bathroom with them. Or I think there was a kindergartner had a harmonica. Somebody was saying they had a harmonica, and, and that's pretty much what the rest of the day, but you get to see everybody's pets, everybody's siblings. There's such a level of realness that I think people are getting to see for the students, but as well for the staff. And that's something that has really just warmed my heart.
Yeah, my teachers, just to echo that great point, my teachers received the question, how do you do it? More than any other question from parents, especially at the elementary level. I mean, 20, how many of these kids? Like, I can't keep my own in front of the screen for the 20 minutes of the mini lesson that he needs to be. How do you do it all day?
So it's a lot. I was a kindergarten teacher, so it is absolutely like herding kittens, but it is like, it's amazing, like I said. But I do think, the families get to see that. They get to see what it looks like where, you're trying to mute everybody, talk to kids, pull them in small groups. And I think they've been very grateful for that opportunity to see that.
I think it's neat that, we've seen education as an industry, as a profession, able to radically and in an adaptive manner in so many levels change because we had to. We didn't want to, we didn't think about it, we didn't know about it, we just did, and we did, and we do. I can't wait. A silver lining I've got is I can't wait for fall 2021 when we take all that we've learned right now and we take the good, we take the not so good, we take all this other stuff, and then we create a new reality for each child and a new reality for all the families. And we've got this humanity and this shared empathy and everything that you've all said, sort of putting it together, saying, wow, we really understand each other on such a different level. Some children are going to benefit from partial distance, partial open creativity, or some combination thereof, or maybe we partner with a neighboring district because these archaic and rigid rules that have governed us for so long maybe aren't relevant anymore. And we've realized that kids are really at the heart of this and their students are at the heart of this. And you know what? Standardized tests don't really always measure creativity, growth, learning, exceptionalism, and exceptionality. And I see a silver lining as legit change carrying over. I don't think any of us want to or will let anybody go back to a normal that was not good for all children and each child.
Yeah, I think Faith, you mentioned that, the goosebumps moments when we were remote for so long and we brought back our special education students on campus. I've got video of them walking into the building that first day and dancing in the hallways. Kids who maybe months prior wanted nothing to do with coming to school now wanted nothing more than to be in school. And it was just that joyous moment. I'll keep that on my phone forever. So this whole Teacher Talk series is brought to us by LifeChanger, and LifeChanger recognizes people that are doing amazing things to help others. And so we wanted our last question to really call to that. Every one of us has stories. We want you just to tell us a story. Tell us about somebody in your community or in your schools that's changing lives. Leave us on this inspirational high note. Joe, you want to start this one? once you unmute yourself, do you want to start this one,
I'm
Joe?
totally kidding right now because I'm trying to think about something right now, right? So if I play the mute card, then maybe I'll be all right, right?
You need me to start somewhere else? I'm happy to accommodate.
Yeah, if somebody else wants to go, they can. I want to get to the point. I mean, I'm having a hard time saying it's one person.
Yeah.
I really am. I mean, I think that the idea that we kept in mind is that I had the same feeling that you did, Nick. You know, we had our kids out for a little bit, and when they came back, like the day that they came back, and the fact that we had teachers in hallways that were just like they couldn't wait to see them, and they couldn't wait to be invested in them, and you know, and the idea that the more that we can keep these kids connected to their world, the better chance we have to help them succeed in the future. And I think the thing that is really that I'm struggling with the most right now is when we're in a hybrid environment and we have like an A/B model. These kids have gone for 10, 11 years of their lives seeing the same group of friends. And then all of a sudden now they're only seeing half of their friends all the time. And the task to keep kids connected in a way that they can still make sure that they maintain that relationship, but it's through a screen with their friends. With your teacher, you might be able to maintain that, right? Like, because when the day is done, the day is done. Okay. But when you normally go to school with kids all day and then you go home and hang out with them and then you go to the game with them and then you get done, you go get pizza after, and then maybe you sleep over after that. Like, that's a day that they no longer have. And so trying to figure out ways that those kids can still stay connected, you know, I'm just telling you, I'll put both my hands up and praise for the people in this building that are doing that. Those are the stories that I want to hear about how we're keeping kids connected.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Brian, you want to go?
I can't pick one out, honestly. We had so many just unsolicited emails of just, you know, Dr. Troop, you need to know how much Mrs. Blank did for my daughter. She looks forward to the story. This teacher reads a book every night, and we use it as our bedtime story. So she's connected to that teacher, and then she pulls in other teachers, the art teacher. So they found creative ways to keep that connection going, to keep the school normalcy going. All the teachers at the high school that orchestrated an amazing drive-in movie theater version of graduation last spring. It was incredible. I've gotten about 100 emails asking, can we do something like this even without the coronavirus? I got to be with my kid in the car through the whole experience instead of having to watch from the audience and see them on stage. Just the creativity of the solutions that our teachers are finding. And those are just some examples that's happening every day in every classroom. So our teachers, I'm humbled to watch and learn how they problem solve, and they know what they're after. They know what the kids need, and they'll find their own way to get there. Because we can't as a system do it the same way for every situation, for every classroom. So they're just finding ways. And then our principals at we have 7 buildings, and they're troubleshooting, making it work, limited substitute teachers, increased, teachers that get quarantined because of people at home and all that kind of, we're dealing with depleted staff, and they're making it work every day just to deliver an opportunity for face-to-face instruction. So our principals are ultimate problem solvers in every one of our buildings. So those two groups, teachers and administrators, just huge standouts right now for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. All right, Faith.
Yeah, I would say that absolutely the same with the teachers, and the principals have been absolutely instrumental, I think, in the work that's happening. One of the things when I think about this question, particularly with the things that have kind of gone on in our nation over the last year, there was a group of individuals that kind of came up in Oak Park called Race Conscious Dialogue. And so this group was kind of developed with all white individuals to give a space for white individuals to talk to other white individuals about things as it relates to race. And so one of the things that I think is particularly exciting about this, but there was such a need there. And as community members, students within Oak Park, we're noticing that there was a lack of comfort that other individuals had talking about race with people that didn't look like them. And so the race conscious dialogue really afforded this opportunity, particularly now when people in the community are like, I need to talk to somebody about this, but I don't want to offend. I don't want to traumatize another individual, but I need to unpack some of this work. And so what I love about this race conscious dialogue is really what it does is it works on some of that internal work that's happening kind of within an individual first, because we often talk about that. We want to make sure that we're not re-traumatizing students, re-traumatizing other people, but kind of working through that. And I think the reason that has been so incredibly pivotal right now is because I think what we're noticing is that things to do with race, if we are able to get white allies and some of those other individuals to be able to speak out against some of the things that are happening, and even Oak Park, which is a very diverse community, we're seeing some of those things. You know, in particular, I think with the pandemic, sometimes when people are worried or concerned, they don't always show up and be their best selves. So there are things that are still happening, things are being done. And so I'm grateful that there is a group that has been created to really support our majority population, you know, within our district, to really make sure that we're kind of moving the needle, but making sure that we're working with those, you know, those white allies within the group. So I know it's a little different, but I just wanted to make sure I gave a shout out. That was something that really has been an opportunity that I think Oak Park needed. It came at the right time. And there's so many people that are on board because it's the right time.
Fantastic. You know, everything that the three of you just said, I'm just going to add, you know, in addition to our teachers and support staff and everybody, that our maintenance staff and the new strategies they learned and techniques to sanitize and disinfect and prepare buildings to be ready. And our food service folks, holy cow, our food service folks have reinvented themselves in their entire delivery, their standard of care. Our bus drivers are bringing meals out throughout the communities and making sure people can get to them. You know, hundreds of thousands of meals we've served since March to make sure our people get what they need. I mean, the list could go on and on, right? I mean, all three of you are right. It's hard to pick a person. Mike, anything you want to add to that?
What I do want to do is I want to say we can go on all night. I would love to. What I do want to remind our attendees, I want to remind Nick, I want to remind our friends at LifeChanger of the Year that this is the first Teacher Talk webinar panel discussion of 2021. Happy 2021. I want to thank very, very heartily my brother from another mother, Nick Poliak. Great guy. We have good stuff, fun opportunities together. Thank Dr. Brian Troop, the superintendent of the Ephrata, Pennsylvania area schools. Faith Cole, the director of MTSS, multiple tiers of student support in Oak Park School District, just outside of Chicago. And of course, Go Crickets, Dr. Joe Sanfilippo from Fall Creek, Wisconsin, for really just doing an amazing, inspiring job of kicking off Unlearning Leadership. This has just been really enjoyable. It's just uplifting right now this evening, and I want to thank you. I encourage our attendees and everyone here in the free world, and even possibly in the non-free world, if you get access to this, to go to lifechangeroftheyear.com, all one word, lifechangeroftheyear.com, and you'll find out that on Tuesday, January 19th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, Dr. Courtney Orzel, Mr. John Bogey, and Dr. Merlin Stiles will talk about unfinished leadership. And then on Thursday, January 28th at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central, Dr. Christine Gilmore, Marcus Phelan, Roy Ruskowski, and Susan Enfield are going to talk about student voice and leadership. Ladies and gentlemen, we're kicking off January with a bang. We're en fuego, as they say. We're on fire. Attendees, thank you for your comments. Nick, your moderation was outstanding. Panelists, really, thank you for giving of yourselves. Thank you for leading. Thank you for unlearning. And Nick has got a few final closing comments as well.
Nope, just very simply, in addition to thanking our friends for coming out and joining us tonight, this was a lot of fun. Everybody who's listening, also go to lifechangeroftheyear.com and nominate somebody from your school and your community. We had the fortunate ability to have one of our staff members recognized, a big surprise assembly, and it was something that, you know, made his day, his year, his decade. And so if there's somebody there, that's what these folks are doing. So make sure that you nominate folks in your community as well. But thanks, as Mike said, for being here tonight. Come out and see us again on the 19th. We're going to talk about, we're going to look a little inward at leadership and how we're all unfinished. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. And Joe, you're going to be home before I get out of my office.
That's right. I'd like to thank you guys for the book. It's been balancing my computer the whole time. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Multiple uses. Joe, we appreciate your MacGyver-like creativity. Fantastic.
It came with crayons.
Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful evening and Happy New Year.
Bye, guys. Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you.